Okay, today we're diving into an explainer of a truly fascinating educational simulation called the client. Now, on its surface, this just looks like your standard run-of-the-mill high school English assignment. But beneath the hood, let me tell you, it is an absolute masterclass in cognitive psychology. The whole thing is engineered from the ground up to test exactly how the human mind processes information when it's put under pressure.
Picture this. You're suddenly handed a criminal case file for a 19-year-old named Daniel Okafor. Daniel is staring down a potential 12 years in prison for first-degree armed robbery. In the state's entire case, it rests on the word of a single eyewitness. So you're instantly plunged into this high-stakes pressure cooker scenario. But what if this criminal case isn't actually about Daniel at all? What if the whole thing is actually a test of your own mind?
To really get a feel for how this works, we have to map out the experience. The simulation runs as what they call a 13-day cascade. We're talking about a 9th grade student, a 14-year-old, whose biggest daily stress is usually who they're going to sit next to at lunch, stepping into the very real-feeling role of an investigator paralegal at a public defender's office. Over 13 working days, they get the case file piece by piece. They're logging daily entries, doing client intake, hitting these major inflection points, and eventually they have to recommend whether Daniel should take a plea deal or take his chances at trial. It's this completely immersive, real-time experience. Which brings us to Section 1, the secret curriculum, and what the file actually establishes.
It's totally human nature. A student gets this file, and their immediate emotional urge is to play detective. They just want to answer the burning question, did Daniel do it? But the curriculum's actual goal is entirely different. It demands this really rigorous epistemological shift. It forces them to ask, what does the file establish? And that's huge, because it forces the students to separate their own private gut beliefs from what can actually be proven on paper.
And that brings us to the simulation's signature capacity, information discernment. The curriculum defines this as the ability to tell what a source actually proves from what it only suggests. Students are actively being trained to pause, read closely, and untangle established facts from their own assumptions and inferences. It's basically the core survival skill they need to navigate the avalanche of documents they're getting hit with. All right, moving on to Section 2, mapping the biases. So, the hidden genius of this whole simulation is how it translates really complex psychology. I mean, if you throw academic terms at a 14-year-old for 12 days, you're going to ruin the immersion, right? So instead, these 6 cognitive biases are translated into really accessible, field-authentic language. Anchoring becomes first impression lock-in. Confirmation bias becomes evidence that fits the story. The students are actively experiencing and logging these biases without even knowing their formal psychological names until the very end.
So how exactly do they test this? Well, let's look at the eyewitness Esther Mensah. She is what the designers call the halo effect carrier. She speaks in this incredibly clean syntax using absolute, unwavering conviction. She says, I am absolutely certain, 100%. To a student acting as a paralegal, she sounds completely credible. Her polish literally creates a halo of accuracy around her. Now place Esther back-to-back with the alibi witness, Coach Raina. He is the complete opposite, the anti-halo carrier. Listen to how he talks. He hesitates, he restarts, he second-guesses himself. Hold on. To an untrained reader, he sounds super unreliable. But here's the catch. He actually possesses an accurate, time-stamped memory that he later backs up with a physical keycard log. The takeaway here is absolutely crucial. Polish is not the same as accuracy. The curriculum deliberately uses these 2 specific witnesses to mess with our own assumptions. Because if you believed Esther just because she sounded confident and you doubted the coach because he took a second to search his memory, well, the halo effect just worked on you. It's a really powerful realization for the student. Okay, into Section 3, boring choice wins and how the grading actually works. On specific days in the simulation, known as interpretive inflection days, or IFDs, the students have to formally commit to their reading of the evidence. They're presented with 3 very rigid paths: integrate the new evidence into their read, hold and test their current read against future evidence, or simply dismiss the new evidence altogether. They literally have to check a box and defend whatever choice they make. And here's where the grading structure gets brilliant. It follows a rule called boring choice wins. Basically, emotional regulation and methodical testing will always outscore jumping to a dramatic conclusion. If a student chooses to just dismiss evidence because it doesn't fit their theory, they fail the rubric. But the methodical hold and test path scores highly, provided they offer a specific falsification condition. They have to state exactly what future evidence would prove them wrong, like, I'll change my mind if I see a surveillance still clearly showing the suspect's face.
This whole architecture is designed specifically to combat hindsight bias. You know, that creeping feeling of, oh, of course it happened that way, I knew it all along. To fight this, the designers built an ingenious trap on day 10. They literally forced the students to open up their workbooks and quote their own unedited journal entry from day 2. It forces them to confront the reality that their memory has been rewritten by new information. They can't pretend they knew it all along, because their own past words are staring right back at them.
Which brings us to the final part, Section 4, the unresolvable question. The tension really peaks on day 8. An intense framing effect is introduced when the prosecuting attorney, ADA Park, offers a plea deal. Just look at the numbers. 4 years in prison versus trial exposure of up to 12 years. The letter is carefully, almost surgically engineered to frame those 4 years as a generous offer. It tests whether the student will inherit the prosecution's frame and panic into taking a deal for a scared teenager, or if they'll hold their ground and stick to what the file actually establishes. And then the curriculum drops a massive bombshell. Day 12 arrives, the final summaries are due, and the case does not resolve. At all. The simulation is engineered to never, ever reveal if Daniel Okafor actually committed the robbery. If you go into this waiting for a tidy Hollywood ending where the real culprit confesses, you are definitely in the wrong simulation. The ultimate lesson drops on day 13. The curriculum defines navigating uncertainty as committing on purpose even when you cannot know what comes next. The students learn that rigorous reading and, honestly, real defense work lives entirely in the gap between what a text says and what can actually be proven. They have to make a life-altering recommendation for a teenager without ever getting the comfort of perfect certainty. It is just such a profound way to teach critical thinking and reading skills, wrapping it all in this unforgettable narrative. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. If you had to decide a 19-year-old's future based only on what the file establishes, setting aside all your gut feelings and biases, could you sit with the gap?